Well, hello, and welcome back to that thing we like to call Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. Before we do anything else, before we start talking about any music, I would just like to welcome back to the channel. It's been a little while, but I'm so happy to have him back, Mr. Todd Evans. Todd, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me back. This is a topic that we've talked about before, and I'm really excited about doing. And it's really good to be back on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to have you. And like you're saying, the last time we had a video, we sort of Todd and I were just talking after the video stopped, and we went on this long, just just like this long conversation that kept going on and on and on, and it was about Fleetwood Mac. And we were talking about Lindsay Buckingham era Fleetwood Mac. And finally, by the end of the conference, before we said goodbye, I said, wait a minute, we have to let's mark that down as a topic for the next video that we do. If we do another one together, let's do that. And Todd said, yeah, let's do it. So that's why we're here talking about Fleetwood Mac today.
And obviously, I've chosen a side, if there's such a thing as choosing a side. But don't worry, I'm going to have lots of nice things to say about everybody.
I love it. The t-shirt is like so on point. Um, So that's yeah, let's just that we'll get to that. I'm sure as we talk about these albums, that will come up because it's inevitable. So we are here today. The topic at hand today is we are ranking the Buckingham era Fleetwood Mac albums because ranking Fleetwood Mac is like a massive task because there's like what how many different I don't know how many different lineups, four or five, six. I don't know. There's like you think
Yeah,
about
they
all
don't
the
split
lineups.
them up like Deep Purple with Mark One and Mark Two, but you sort of could. I probably should have done that, but yeah, there's something to like in all of them. But
Yes. Yes. All of them have their own little like things, everything, where you got the Peter Green starting with the blues and that sort of blues boom Peter Green, which I like some of that quite a bit actually. And then you move into like the Danny Kerwin and the Bob
which
Welsh
is
and the
rootsy in a different way. And then you get to Bob Welsh, who's kind of mysterious, almost kind of like Lindsay Buckingham is, but in a different way.
Yes. Yes. And it's almost like it's amazing. I mean, this is also a lot of, it says a lot about the 70s, the 60s and the 70s where a band, because they were selling a lot of records at that time. They were just sort of languishing on Warner Brothers, like selling like the minimum amount
They were
to keep
sitting
out.
on 300,000 copies every time, but it never went up.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
not enough to go gold. So
Exactly. And just the fact that the labels kept on with them, it's just unbelievable. I don't know if it was Mick Fleetwood just working his magic with the record companies. I don't know what was going on, but he was able to keep it going until Lindsay and Stevie Nicks joined, and then all of a sudden, obviously everybody knows the story. They make rumors and they go crazy. They just go nuts.
I love that story about, well, first of all, I love that Mick Fleetwood heard a tape of of Lindsay playing at Sound City, and he asked the engineer Keith Olson, "Who is that guy?" And then so he hooked him up with Lindsay, and was made the offer, and he said, well, I'll be willing to do it, but I'm a duo with this other person, and I would really appreciate it if you would take her too. And immediately, Mick Fleetwood just said, "Sure." And
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that part of the story, but I also love the fact that they went out and bought all the Fleetwood Mac albums, and Lindsay and Stevie sat on the floor and listened to him, and Stevie said, "I think we can add something to this band." And so I love that part of the story too. So
Yeah, and I love that apparently I had read also that they asked Christine McVie, "Are you okay with another female in the band?" or something like
yeah,
that. And she said, "Yeah, okay, no
sure.
problem." So,
It is
um,
kind of a boys' club after all, so I
yeah, yeah,
can't see a
exactly.
downside to that.
Yeah, no, it's a great story. It really is. And so anyway, and then the rest is history. So we're going to be going through all these records. So I don't want to do too much of the story because it'll come out as we go through the albums, I'm sure. So let's just go. We're just going to go back and forth. I did this with my last video I did 70s Yes with Alan Rosenberg, and we just went back and forth and just had our lists. So So why don't you, if you don't mind, Todd, why don't you go ahead and start with, we'll start at number six because there's six
All
records.
right.
Let's, and are doing studio. We also have to say we're doing studio records. The
Right.
dance doesn't count because it's like a live record. So,
Yeah. Okay. So first, another disclaimer. These are all 9 out of 10 plus for me, all of these. So when I tell you what my number six is, it's not like this is like a crappy album that I don't
right.
like. So my number six was Tusk.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
which I still think is great. I actually think one of the reasons I put this on the bottom is that I understand what happened and I understand why it is what it is, but I have a couple of issues with this record. One of them is I'll go with the issues first and then I'll talk about the good stuff. One of the issues is I think that the weird, quirky Lindsay songs should have been fleshed out with Mick and John rather than just stay rough demos as they are. Not that they're not very cool, because they are very cool. And as somebody who's a Lindsay Buckingham fan, I enjoy those songs very much. But I
yeah.
think if they had done that, that would have done this, that this would have taken this record to another level. I understand why they didn't, but
Right.
and then I also wanted to say was I think you could take side one and side two of this album and maybe pull a couple of songs off of three and four and stick them on that, and you've got a really good follow-up to Rumors. I
Right.
think starting with Over and Over and having Think About Me, Save Me a Place, and Sarah, you have Sarah and Storm, so you've got two really exquisite Stevie Nicks centerpieces. And then you've got the quirky Lindsay stuff, and then the ending it with Sisters of the Moon, I think would have been a great closer to this album. And then I probably would have taken let's see, probably, I know I'm not wrong, and Walk a Thin Line and moved them up into the mix somewhere. And you would
Right.
have had a 12-song album that was really strong, right at about 47, 48 minutes. And so I kind of wish they had done that. I don't, being somebody who was in marching band, I thought Tusk was pretty cool, but
Right.
I don't
Right.
think the record needs it.
Hmm.
So I
Such
think
a
it kind of
strange
takes
single too, right?
yeah, it takes attention away from some really beautiful tracks. Like one of the things I love about this album is that I love the way Mick Fleetwood's drums are recorded. The cymbal crashes are just silky smooth, and the way that they're placed in the mix, you can hear everything that he does. And I think his playing, I think that's a really underrated part of this album that nobody really talks about. Is that I just think that Fleetwood's playing is just masterful. And and I have to say that I think that that's all for everyone. When I heard this record, I was not a Fleetwood Mac fan. I was in high school going into college, and I heard it actually a little bit late. I didn't hear it when it came out. I didn't hear it till a couple years later because for one, it was an expensive record. So
Yes, right,
my sister
exactly.
didn't buy it, and she
Double
was the one
album.
that bought
Yeah.
the Fleetwood Mac records in our family. And so, I was a casual Fleetwood Mac song, but a fan. But when I heard That's All for Everyone, I was totally blown away and obsessed with it. And I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
that's why I became a Fleetwood Mac fan because that song is a perfect encapsulation of what Lindsay's magic. And I was just really transfixed by it. And from that moment on, I became a fan. And so even though I think this album's a little bit too long and a little bit could have some things cut out of it, I even though I said that it's last place, but like
Right.
I said, I
Yeah.
like it a lot. And
Yeah.
as we go along, I'll sort of explain how this, kind of it'll be clear about why I think this one ends up at the bottom.
Yeah. You'll make the pieces fit. It will
Yeah,
make sense by the end of
hopefully.
it. Yes. Yes. There you go. So, well, excellent. So I yeah, it's difficult. It's kind of like the like I said about the Yes catalog. It was the same thing we kept saying over and over again. We were doing the Yes one. Doesn't mean it's a bad album. Just because I
Right.
have it low, it just because all of these records have their strengths and their great songs and it just this is the hard part about ranking because when you love a band and you love their discography, you're like it's got to go somewhere.
Right.
And that's always the hard part, right? You have to put it somewhere. So it really usually comes down to, for me, I always say this, I have to be honest. It's not about being cool. It's not about being it's not about agreeing with the critics. It's about what album do I love the most? What album do I listen to the most? That kind of stuff. So I had to be honest and put Say You Will at number 6. So this
I've
is
got
the album
Philip's
that,
version of that.
yeah, there you go. So we have two different versions right there. There you go. And I really, this was the album that was sort of like a reunion of sorts, that happened, 15 years after the last Lindsay Buckingham studio record. And it's a very interesting record, and I think this is the album that Todd and I were talking the most about when we started our
Yeah.
conversation, because there's a whole documentary on YouTube, that was released with this. Yeah, there it is. There it is, Destiny Rules. Yep. Yep.
And you can get it on DVD. And I looked, it's a really cheap DVD to get. I'm going to talk more about this when I get to Say You Will, but
Hmm.
everyone should have Say You Will and everyone should watch this because it's fascinating.
Yes, it is
So,
totally fascinating. So
yeah.
this is the thing that got us going really a lot on this topic, because it's a fascinating watch and it really shows the dynamic at play during the making of this album.
Yeah,
Um,
and it shows kind of the tail end of the music business as it was.
Absolutely. So true. Because at one point, we'll talk more about this, but at one point, Stevie says, people don't buy CDs anymore or something like that. She says that in the documentary at some point.
Yeah.
Uh, so she was aware of it because she had been releasing solo records and they're less and less going on with the sales. And I think she was very aware of that. So but anyway, this was I mean, they were very excited to make this album. It was very exciting for Lindsay and Stevie to be back in the band again. And there are some great songs on this. However, this is longer than Tusk. So this one goes on for quite a long time,
Hard
and
to
there's
believe.
a lot of songs on it, and it goes, I mean, but that being said, I love certain songs. I just love. What the World's Coming to, I just absolutely love. I think that's a great opener, great Lindsay song. Actually, Stevie's in fine form on this record. I think Thrown Down is excellent. I love that song. What was the Say You Will is I think hers, right? That's her song, and I love Say You Will. And Lindsay does a lot of his quirkiness. It's almost like a lot of the stuff on this kind of reminds me of like hi-fi versions of his Tusk songs in some ways, because and he could tell he's really fooling around a lot in the studio. Like he is going crazy, doing like everything he can think of, because he knows it's going to have the Fleetwood Mac name on it, and more people are going to hear it. So I think he got excited and
Yeah.
went kind of nuts in a way. Um, but I do think there's a lot of great music on this album. And what was the other one? Peacemaker, I think, is another song I really love.
Hmm.
So there's a couple of songs that are really, really, really strong. And so I feel the same way that you just said about Tusk. I feel the same way about this, where I feel like, man, if this just got like, this is like the CD disease. This is one of those CDs where you go, the CD disease, where they fill up the CD and they didn't have to,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
Again, they did not agree on how long Say You Will should be.
That's right. I forgot that's in there. That's right. So you can talk about that. So I'll let you talk about that. But that's my number 6 is Say You Will. So,
All right.
yep.
Well, my number five is Say You Will. And
Okay.
I really, really wanted to put this higher. But
Okay.
when I get to what my number four is, I'll explain why it got the edge over this. But I think this is an exquisite album. I think it's fantastic. If you consider yourself a Fleetwood Mac fan or even a casual fan, and you don't have this because it doesn't have Christine on it, or it's, not from their peak time, please do yourself a favor and stream it and
Yeah.
and and check it out because it's very, very, very strong. And one of the things that I think is really interesting about it is that even though I think it's too long, I have a really hard time coming up with what I want to cut from it.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
more I listen to it, the more I realize that there were only like maybe two that I was sure that I wanted to cut from it. Um, What the World's Coming to is what the world is a great opener. They always tended to open with a Lindsay song. Murrow turning over in his grave is absolutely fantastic. I love how weird it is, and I think that had that been on a Lindsey Buckingham solo album, which I think is probably where it would have ended up, the fact that he did it with Fleetwood Mac, it has so much more thunder and power having John and Mick on it than it would have with drum machine or whatever he would have ended up using. And so
Right.
but that's one of the things that I think one of the things that I think are so strong about the albums that are at the top of this list is the sequencing, how they bounce around between the artists that are leading each track.
Right.
And this one is very different. This one is Lindsay, Lindsay, Stevie, Stevie, Lindsay, Lindsay, Stevie, Stevie. And so they've each time there's no Christine to throw in there. So each time you get to one of the main artists, you've got two songs.
Hmm.
And that's cool. It's kind of a cool novelty, but it doesn't flow as well as some of the earlier albums.
Right.
But I do want to say that I think Illume is a super powerful Stevie Nicks song. This is this is probably I would be willing to say that this is Say You Will is probably her strongest uh, contribution as far as having all of her songs have I mean, until you get to the top two, like
Right.
all of her
Right.
songs having real weight and being really exceptionally good. And they talk about that in the Destiny Rules uh, documentary, is how impressed they are with what she brings.
Yeah.
And Illumi is great. Thrown Down is great. There is a great uh, scene in Destiny Rules where they're talking about how in that song, in the verses, she's talking about Lindsey Buckingham, and she speaks about him in the third person, and then
Hmm.
she changes it to you. She changes it to, she changes the perspective. And so there's a scene where Lindsay calls her on that, and he says, I think that you're making a mistake in doing, he's very diplomatic about it, in switching the tense. And that I think that you need to be you're telling a story, you need to be consistent. And he says,
Right.
like, you say him, and then you say, now you're going home. Who are you talking about? And she's like, you, I'm talking about you. And he said, okay,
Mhm.
well, you have to, you really shouldn't say now you're going home. And she said, well, I like the way the words sound,
Yeah.
which you can't really argue with that. And
Right.
he doesn't, he's very
Sort of
diplomatic.
backs off. Yeah. He sort
Yeah,
of
and
backs
she
off.
says you wouldn't say that to Bob Dylan, and he says, "Well, this isn't really that's not really a good example because you're telling a story that has specific like characters in it." And
Right.
she's like, "Well, I'm not going to change it because I like the way the words sound." And he says, "Okay,"
All
and
right.
he backs off.
Okay. Yeah.
But when you read it, he's absolutely right. He's not wrong.
No, he's not. He's not.
So,
He's
but
not
I
wrong.
think that that is really a good and powerful conversation between two incredibly creative people
Oh yeah. Yeah.
seeing something
Yeah.
differently, and neither one of them being wrong. And
That's sort
so
of the fascinating
I
part about it. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of the things I love about it. So I love Thrown Down. Miranda, I might have taken off if you had to take something off.
Right.
Red
Right.
Rover and Say Goodbye are sort of they're different songs because they have different paces and tempos, but they both kind of kind of foreshadow to this. Which I
Yes.
Lindsay's
Yes.
solo peak. They
That's
both have that very busy, intricate acoustic guitar background with a
right.
lot of notes,
Yep.
and and
Yeah.
so you get you get uh, you get kind of a precursor of what you're going to get from Lindsay in the further on along in the 2000s.
Yep.
And but there's some great songs. Come, I think, is spectacular. I think that I've always thought that in Fleetwood Mac there were songs that were supposed to be the part of the concert that are like I'm So Afraid. And so it
Right.
almost seems like they're trying to create with every album another version of that so the girls can go have costume changes and
Yeah.
the three guys can like rock out on some really super. And that's actually, I mean, that sounds misogynistic for me to say that, but that's actually what they did. That's actually what I'm So Afraid was.
Yeah.
Stevie would go change and Christine would stay because she was part of the ensemble for that song. But that I love that, and I don't think "Come" is the second best. That comes on the album I'm going to talk about next, but I think it's the third best. It's got an insane guitar solo, absolutely insane. I think Peacekeeper is great. I saw them, I, and I hate this. I saw them play Peacekeeper before this album came out on the Tonight Show,
Oh, okay. Okay.
and which is a big deal because
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac doing the Tonight Show, and the only thing that anybody talked about when it happened was that uh, Stevie Nicks had put on some weight, and so that got all of the attention.
Got all
And
the
I was just
headlines.
like,
All the
she
headlines.
looks
Yeah.
fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody that's had so many issues with drugs, I'm thrilled to see her looking healthy, you know?
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
always hated that because I thought that was a really great performance
Yeah.
when
It's
they did
of
that.
course that's what they focus on. It's like, come
Right.
on.
Right.
Appearance. Yeah.
Right. So I hate that. But
Yeah.
these songs are great. Bleed to Love Her is great. It was great on the dance.
Oh, I
I'm going
forgot
way too
about
long.
Bleed to Love Her.
I'm
That's right.
sorry.
Yeah, that's a great one.
But Everybody Finds Out is just a knockout of a song.
Hmm.
That is one of the best. That is one of the best later. I think that might be the best latter day uh, Mac with Lindsay song.
Yeah.
And I can't say enough about this album. Even though it's kind of weird how it goes Lindsay, Lindsay, Stevie, Stevie, Lindsay, Lindsay. Some of the transitions are really remarkable. The transition between Red Rover and Say You Will is great. So
Mhm.
it has some continuity, even though it's way too long.
Right.
It does actually flow pretty well.
Hmm.
And I think that it's just some fantastic performances. And hopefully I've said everything I want to say about it. It comes in at number 5 for me, but I love it.
Yeah. No, it's a quality record. There's no
Yeah.
doubt. There's no doubt. And it's just it's a fascinating document of of a snapshot of where they were at that time as a
Yeah.
band, you know.
Yeah. And
Uh,
I wanted to say something about what you said about Stevie Nicks. One of the things that happened to her and the reason that she didn't contribute anything to what would have been the last Fleetwood Mac album, which ultimately uh and we'll talk about this when we get to the end, ultimately I think became this,
right.
is that she was convinced that nobody was going to buy it because her album In Your Dreams didn't sell at all, didn't chart at all. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think that's one of her best albums, if not her best album. There's a
Right.
song on that called Italian Summer, which is so good. When I heard it, I was just like, she's going to win all the Grammys.
Yep.
And then that album got no attention at all. Even the cover of that album is great. And I
Yeah.
was just like,
It didn't do anything. It did
so I
nothing for her.
understand why she felt that way. I
Right.
really do. I really
Yeah.
do understand it. I think she was wrong, but
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I understand it.
Yes. Yes. And I do I was gonna say two things about Say You Will, and then we'll move on. And that is one, like you had mentioned a little bit, they do feel it does feel like they're walking on eggshells around Stevie. When
Mhm.
you watch that document, it feels like everyone is like making sure that she doesn't get angry or upset, or it's so funny. It's like they're push her a little bit and then they back off. It's
But
fun.
but you see them reacting to her in a very positive way.
Yes.
Ultimately, they
Yes.
all react to her in a very positive way, and she came prepared.
She did come prepared. Yeah,
She
absolutely.
came with
Yeah.
the goods. And
She
so,
came, did she come with us? She said, I was up all night, but I wrote four songs, and all the four songs
yeah,
are all great.
she says it like 3 times, but I
Yeah.
wrote 4 songs. But I wrote 4 songs. And they're all and Lindsay says that too in the documentary. He says, "Well, if all your songs are as good as these are, we're not going to have any trouble filling this up."
Yeah.
Little did she know
Yeah.
that it would be
Yeah.
way too full.
Yeah, it's almost too much, but yeah, and I do look, you mentioned this too, and the last thing I'll say is I do miss Christine a little bit, like a little bit. Like even though these songs are strong, I miss her a little bit.
You miss the laid back vibe that her songs bring, and so you sort of get uh it's a lot to take in
Yeah, yeah,
because everything Stevie's songs are kind of weighty, they're
right,
kind of dark. And
right.
Lindsay's
Yes,
songs are always kind of dark. And so
right.
you get
You're
a
like,
lot of
where's the light? Yeah, where's the light?
right. And Peacekeeper, I always had the issue with Peacekeeper because one of the lines in it is take no prisoners, only kill. And that song is a really dark political commentary. And for the single version of that, they take out the word kill and they put something else in. I don't remember what it is, but there's
Oh,
an
did they?
edit. And I
Yeah,
always thought to myself, man, that's pretty dark stuff. The whole album Merle turning over in his grave is pretty dark stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's pretty intense.
Fantastic album, but yeah, it's missing that other piece.
Yeah, yep, yep. So that kind of takes me to my number five, which is Tango in the Night. And this is speaking of Christine McVie, I think she really is pretty strong presence on this record. She, was she, what Little Lies is a pretty big hit. And it's still till to this day, you still hear about that song still like pops up. Like it seems like it pops up
Mhm.
everywhere. Um, and Everywhere is another song. That's the one I'm thinking of. Everywhere is the one that pops up everywhere. It seems like it shows up in commercials, and
Yeah.
suddenly there was a recent commercial with us everywhere was the song. It was,
Yeah.
it was like a credit card commercial or something. It's like,
Yeah, the PayPal uh I can't remember his
is,
name now, but
is it
yeah.
Will Ferrell?
Yeah, Will Ferrell, yeah.
Will Ferrell. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I Want You With Me Everywhere. And it's like, oh my God, that's Fleetwood
It
Mac.
was in commercials for Kohl's too, the department store.
Yeah. So I mean that's a talk about, we always mention the mailbox. That's a mailbox money one for Christine McVie.
Right.
Um, or it was, I should say it was. So, but I think there's some, again, none of these albums, I've got to reiterate again, these are all very good records. I think that this thing kicks off Big Love, Seven Wonders, Everywhere. I mean, those three songs, like one, two, three punch, like booms, comes in
Yeah,
swing. And they're like, oh my God, this album's going to be a masterpiece. And then for me personally, it sort of trails off a little bit.
it does.
Um, and I do like, I think the singles are amazing. I think Stevie's not on quite on her game on this album. That's my opinion. It's not, I don't love, except for Seven Wonders. Stevie's her songs are kind of they're okay. I think that she was really embroiled heavily in her solo career by this point, and she was kind of using all of her
Yeah,
top shelf material was gone.
she was doing her for her press for I think is it Rock a Little or the other side of the mirror? She was doing press for one of her albums while they're recording this. And she was only there for 2 weeks.
Yeah, yes, exactly. I think it was Rock a Little, I think was
Yeah.
the album, and before. And yeah, so she really kind of came in, and I think she was also struggling a lot with, I don't, again, this is me speculating. I think she was struggling with drugs at this point too, a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, but anyway, but I will say Lindsay always does a great job. He always brings some top shelf material, and he does here. I do like, I like the title track. I like Family Man. I like quite a bit. I like Caroline. So I mean, there are. I mean, it's again not a bad record. I just had to put it somewhere, and I don't really I don't listen to it that often. But when I do, I usually enjoy it. So there you go. Tango of the Night's my number five.
All right. Well, good segue into my number four, which is also Tango in the Night.
Okay.
And
All right.
there's the band photo on the back there, which I always thought was a cool photo.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and if in case you wondered, there were deluxe versions of Tango and Mirage released, I think in 2017 and 2018 or
Yeah, not too long
2016 and
ago. Yeah.
2017. If you buy the single versions, you get the remasters from that year but just in a single CD. I was curious
Okay.
as to what you'd get if you bought them and you actually get the remasters, but just disc one,
Nice. Okay.
which I
Okay.
think is kind of cool.
That's great.
But I picked this one. I almost flip-flopped it with Say You Will.
Okay.
Uh, I didn't because I think it hangs together a little better as an album. And also because of what they were going through when they recorded it, it was really not very smooth. Uh,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was, even though Stevie Nicks was going through some treatment for drug abuse. She and Fleetwood were doing a lot of cocaine,
Yeah.
and it got to the
Yeah.
point where they were recording this at Lindsay Buckingham's home studio, and it got to the point where Lindsay rented a Winnebago and parked it in his driveway so that they could go out there rather than bringing the chaos into his house.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know
And
that.
so
Wow.
there was a lot going on.
Go do your
And
coke out there. We don't bring it in the house. Yeah.
right. Well, they had, guests and people
Yeah.
coming in and out late at night. And
Yeah.
so he
Yeah.
rented them a party bus. But which if you think about it, everybody says that Lindsey Buckingham is not easygoing, but that seems to be a kind of a pretty chill thing to do.
Totally. Like, hey, like I know that you guys have an issue. Like, this is how we'll fix it. That's
Right.
kind of a smart thing to do.
You don't have to
Yeah.
get in your cars and drive and endanger anyone else's lives. Just stay here, but
Yeah.
not in my living room with my
Right.
family.
Right.
Um, but
Yeah.
anyway, I digress. I think Big Love is an absolute masterpiece.
Love it.
I
Yeah.
think that, and one of the things that happened with this record was that I'm sorry, Stevie was not in her best voice for this record.
Mhm.
So there were some places where Lindsay did a lot of he was getting really into experimenting with speeding things up and slowing things down. So that's why the little sound effect part in the end of Big Love, which sounds like a man and a woman, is actually Lindsay and Lindsay. It's just Lindsay sped up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
instead of it being Stevie, which it could have been, um, they apparently there was an argument when Stevie heard Everywhere and she wasn't in it. She said, "You had to put me in Everywhere," and so they had to redo the vocal arrangement so they could put Stevie in it because she was mad because
Okay.
she wasn't on the album enough. But I think that considering the fact that there was so much chaos during the recording of this album. The way that they all trade lines and little lies seems very effortless, and it seems like everybody's represented. The way I think you were talking about. Well, let me start this by first saying I think Seven Wonders is spectacular. I think it's top tier Stevie
Yeah.
Fleetwood Mac song. And her voice is rough, but I kind of like it. It kind of
Mhm.
works.
Yeah, it does work. Yeah.
And but I also think that When I See You Again, I mean, I think When I See You Again is pretty bad. I think that one
Right.
is really hard to get through, which she repeats "What's the matter, baby" about 7 times.
Yeah.
But Lindsey Buckingham apparently, when he starts singing the chorus towards the end, it's kind of like a little bridge. He improvised that. And I think that that really saves the song. And it made me at the time like the song when I didn't think I was going to. Because
Right.
when you hear, and that's one of the great things about a band like this, is when you hear a band that has more than one lead vocalist, that's one of my favorite things in the world. And I love that. I love that about the Beatles. I love that about the Monkees. I love that about REM, that
Yeah.
you have these underdog vocalists that maybe sing every third or fourth song.
It is
And
cool. It's
so
very cool. Yeah. Yeah.
hearing, more than one person sing on a song rather it just being so concrete. Lindsay, Stevie,
Yeah.
Christine, Lindsay.
Yep.
The fact that they were able to do that when they were not there were a lot of issues. There was a lot of drama
Yep.
that
Yep.
they did a remarkable job.
Mhm.
And like for example, When I See You Again was supposed to be the last song, but Lindsay and Christine took You and I Part One and split it from the longer song and stuck it at the end. And I think that that was a genius move because I think it really kind of saves the end of the album.
Yeah.
And another thing I wanted to say about this album is that it was when Lindsay and Christine started working as a duo. They started writing together, and you can
Yes.
tell that in Little Lies. I just learned yesterday that doing some research that the keyboard part at the beginning of Little Lies is actually recorded at half speed and then sped up.
Oh,
That Lindsay was
interesting.
really interested in doing that, and apparently there were a couple of songs that were recorded that way, where they started with a like a 10-minute long version that went at half speed, and then they
Oh,
sped it up so that it would sound kind of weird, and I think that's really cool.
that's cool. Yeah.
So for those kinds of reasons, that's why I pushed it up against why I pushed it up ahead of Say You Will. But I
Okay.
think I think considering all the things they tried and all the problems they were having, they came up with something really good despite it, and
Yeah,
it
exactly.
gets extra points for that.
Considering all the challenges they were up against, they did a pretty great job. Yeah.
And at the time, 1987, I was 23. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the singles, but particularly, still stand up today. Very
They
strong
do. And they
songs.
don't sound, it's weird. They don't sound dated. And that's the one thing that Mick Fleetwood says about Tango in the Night is that he regrets that it has so many sounds on it that sound dated. But I disagree. I don't think it does.
I don't really feel that. So yeah, I'm with you. Okay, well, I am on to number four, and my number four is Tusk. Um, so again, I just did Yes in the 70s, and I had this whole thing about topographic oceans where I'm like, oh, just I really want to like topographic oceans more. What's the matter with me? Why can't I love topographic? Because there's some people that just love it. It's a masterpiece. And I just always feel like there's like a little bit too much padding. And I'm in the Rick Wakeman school of like I love some of it, but I think some of it feels like a little padding and kind of feel the same way about Tusk. Like it's like there's moments on this where you're like, oh God, this is great, this is brilliant. And then there's other times where you feel like, eh. So it's like you got to take, and it's a double album, so you got to really dig into this. And I did listen to this in preparation for this, and it's funny. I've said this before in a couple episodes where I always have these impressions that are maybe that I'm older and I haven't listened to this album in a while, but I always had this impression that the second half of this album wasn't that strong, or the second album per se. But actually, it's not like that. It's pretty the second album is actually not bad at all. It's
Yeah,
actually,
it's got
you
a
know,
couple of real moments on it. I think it's weaker than the first half, but it's got a couple of things on it that are just spectacular. So
yeah. I mean, like, Beautiful Child is like, whoa, I forgot how good that was. Walk a Thin Line,
yeah.
uh, Brown Eyes, that's enough for me. It's like, wait a minute, I forgot there. But so anyway, I think that this album is so hard to talk about because there's a lot to love, but yeah, and I do love, there's parts of me that I'm so split on this record because part of me loves that Lindsay Buckingham. I love the ambition of I'm going to do this stuff at home and I'm going to do these kind of demos that are a little bit crazy and like way off the path. And this is what I want to do. And he felt, and you could, there's an energy coming off those tracks where you can tell he's excited to be doing that. Apparently, he was really into the Talking Heads and he wanted to be more like cutting edge. He didn't want Fleetwood Mac to be this sort of old, sort of classic rock, dinosaur. He wanted to be like in with the times and cutting edge. And you could feel that on some of his like The Ledge um, That's All for Everyone, like you mentioned. It's a great track. Um, Not That Funny, things like that, where he's just, yeah, that funny, is it? He's doing these kind of vocals that are kind of all over the place. And but to your point, it's like, man, I wish it's almost like you can tell that the band is sort of trying to fit in on his demos, and it's like some of these songs could have been so much better if they had just done full band versions of them. You know what I mean? Well, like you
Yeah.
said with Mick drumming, you had mentioned Mick's drumming, and could not agree more. I mean, listen to the song over and over. You listen to his drumming; it is like masterful.
That last minute where there's
Oh,
the sound of that cymbal where he goes ba-dum ba-dum, and
and
it's
the
just The sound of it is just so beautiful.
And the toms are ringing perfectly. Like the
Yeah,
drums sound so good, and you can hear like it's the mix of that song is like you can hear every instrument, and it's just it's awesome. It's very cool. It's like such a mellow song, but you get so pulled into that song. I love
yeah,
that track. So and I love Think About Me, and I love Save Me a Place. Oh my God. I mean, so there's just so many great songs on this. It just I can't place it above other records though. So I had to go somewhere. So I'm putting it at number 4, Tusk. I'm
all right.
struggling. You can tell I'm struggling with this one.
Okay, well, I actually feel I was worried about putting this next one at number three over what I put at number four, five, and six, but I'm going with at number three, Mirage. And for the first thing I'm going to say, since I'm holding this up, is I think this is one of the greatest covers of all time. I think that might be the most elegant photo of these three people that there could ever have been. And then
Yes.
even the back is cool. And
Oh, it's
I,
sort of the Cheap Trick thing where the beautiful people are on the front.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it is. But they look damn good.
They
So,
look pretty
you
good.
know,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, one of the things about this album is that Lindsay, in hindsight, says that he thinks it's a little too safe. When I heard it, I thought it was actually pretty experimental and pretty cutting edge. Um, I think that I I kind of feel like the duo of Lindsey Buckingham and Richard Dashit were kind of at the peak of their powers on Tango in the Night and on Lindsay's solo album Out of the Cradle. But
Right.
they're really firing on all cylinders here too, and I love the production of this album. And I think that Can't Go Back is one of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs of all time, and it's
Yeah.
very simple. I mean, it's just really simple,
It
but
is, but it's
it's so
great.
good.
But it's
And
great.
it's
Yeah.
interesting that the first time you hear Stevie, and this is kind of a similar thing that they did a lot. You don't hear Stevie until like the third track or the fourth track, and they
Yeah.
pretty much did that every time. But for them to start her off with "That's All Right," which is really, I love the song, but it's a pretty low key song. I just love that. I feel like they're confident on this record. I feel like
Yeah.
they're kind of going, these are the songs, and we're just gonna put them on there. And
Yeah.
and it's not like they thought, okay, well, let's take Stevie's best song, maybe it's Gypsy. Let's make sure that's the first thing you hear from her. But they don't do that.
Right.
And so I think
Right.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I think Book of Love is fantastic. I think Gypsy is absolutely,
Oh,
man, I can't
perfect.
say enough good
Yeah.
things about Gypsy.
Yeah.
I was completely mesmerized by that song when I heard it.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think Empire Straight is back really quirky, almost as quirky as some of the stuff on Tusk.
Hmm.
And Straight Back is good because it's so, like I said, again, kind of simple and straightforward. Hold Me is quirky and weird. The fact that Hold Me was such a huge hit, I think is amazing because it's a pretty quirky song. It's
It
almost kind of
is.
new wave in a
It
way.
is.
But
Yeah.
you've got Christine's mellow vocals on it, and then you've got that crazy guitar solo on it, which I think is again another one of Lindsay's best solos. The,
Right.
the tone of his guitar on that song is so cool. And when I heard it, I was like, I don't think I've ever heard anything like this. I think it's great. And Eyes of the World is fantastic. Eyes of the World is almost kind of like a mini epic. And Wish You Were Here is beautiful. They let Christine end each side in a really classy way, which I think is cool. I just think that this album really holds together. I think that the sequencing of it is perfect. And so I put Mirage at number three. I don't think many people would do that. I think a lot of, not that I'm saying this is so great because I'm putting it at number three, but I think a lot of people would put Tusk in front of Mirage, but
Hmm.
I like Mirage better.
Well, I'm agreeing with you. I'm going to continue the conversation because I'm at number 3. I have Mirage as well. And I feel the same way. I'm just going to reiterate a lot of what you said about it already. And this, in my view, it's almost like, I was saying how Tusk, like I wish Lindsay would have let the band play on his stem. It's kind of what happens here. He kind of lets the band
Yeah.
play on his songs again. And they're, even though they're quirky, things like Empire State, like you said, and and there's a little bit of like genre like they're trying out like like Stevie does, with That's All Right, is kind of a little like country western vibe, and then
And
like
then,
Oh Diane's like a
yeah,
50s, you know.
yeah,
Oh
definitely.
Diane. Do, 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 do. But it works. It totally
Yeah,
works. Um and I just think that, man, Love in Store, what a great opener. Love that. Can't Go Back. You had mentioned that. I just Can't
yeah.
Go Back is like,
I don't even
love
know what it is about Can't Go Back that I love so much, but I just have always loved it.
that vocal arrangement, like where it's
Yeah.
the can't go back, can't go. I mean, it's just like you said, it's very simple, but Lindsay does his magic on it, and
And the kind of a skiffle beat that it has. It's
yeah, and it's
good.
very just it just really bounces along really nicely, and I just love it.
Yeah.
And Gypsy, like you said, Gypsy is just I've heard Gypsy a million times. I still love it. I don't, like you said, there's something hypnotic about that track. It's one of my favorite Stevie Nicks songs ever. I just think it's fantastic. And
The quintessential, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
oh, go
I
ahead.
have to say that it's the quintessential version of her standing in the video with a fan blowing her hair.
Yes, yes, and dancing in a circle in the rain
She
or
did
whatever.
that so many other times after that. She's like, "Oh, I like that. Let's do that again," like in her
Yeah,
solo career.
totally. Like
And I love it.
it was a cool video. I liked the video at the time. Um, and Hold Me, like you said, what a weird single, but it worked, I think Hold Me is a great song as well. Again, Lindsay's really on this. To your point, the production is excellent. Richard Dashit and Lindsay are like a team. They work together, and they make these great sounding albums. And you can tell they toil in the studio to make sure that they sound great.
Yeah.
I love that you said, I didn't really think about this, that you mentioned that both sides end with like Christine kind of ballads almost. And it's kind of nice. Like Only Over You is like really nice, and I love the harmonies,
Hmm.
and then Wish You Were Here is another like mellow melodic song. So it's kind of interesting that both sides end with these sort of Christine ballads. But I pull this album out quite a bit. Like I still listen
Same
to this
here.
a lot. So I had to put it high. It's number three.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny. it- and I got this impression listening to all of these re-listening to all of these albums in the last 4 or 5 days. Th this is a band that knew what they had, and they knew that the only way it was really going to work is if they presented themselves not one person over the other. Like it would have been really easy for these albums to be heavily weighted in Stevie Nicks' favor because she was kind of the biggest star. And they
Right.
never did that. And to Stevie's credit, even though I'm not crazy about some of the things that she's done recently,
Hmm.
she was really good about that. She never really demanded to have more presence. I'm the big star. I
Yeah.
should have more than 3 songs. I should have 6 songs. That never happened. And
For
so
many
you
years
always get the
she did do
feeling
that
that
for
they knew
many
who they
years.
are. Yeah.
Eventually it kind of happened, but it was a
Yeah.
long time down the road.
Right.
Yeah. But you're right. She could have easily, in the 80s, she could have been like, that's it. I'm the big star. I'm calling the shots. She could have done that, and she didn't do it. I think she believed in the chemistry of the band. I think
I think
she
so too.
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. So what's your number two?
Okay. My number 2 is, and here's where the hate mail comes
Oh
in.
boy, here it comes.
This was really hard.
Yeah,
This
it's
was a
hard.
really hard
It's
decision
hard. Yeah.
because it's the difference between whether you like LA Sound City kind of a sound or whether you like a laid back Sausalito kind of sound. And it's like, what do you like better, New York pizza or deep dish pizza? It's like, I don't
Exactly.
know. How do I choose that?
And they're both 5 star. Let's be honest.
Right.
They're fives. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
picked Rumors as my number 2,
Right.
and I'll explain a little bit more when I get to my number 1, but I picked it as my number 2. I think that it's pretty spectacular record. I think that it's again sequencing is key here. They were really really good at that, and
Right. Right.
and
Yes, they were.
it bounces around from it goes from Lindsay to Stevie to Lindsay to Christine to Lindsay to Christine, and so you got this really nice kind of flow, and it's got secondhand news is great. It's almost kind of like Monday Morning too, but
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
bad way to follow up a really successful album with another successful album is to kind of be in familiar territory. Uh,
Right.
Dreams is just great. Dreams seems to me, I went most of my life thinking that Dreams was, Dreams it's a good song. It's a Stevie song. It's the one everybody likes. But when you really listen to that with headphones, there's really a lot going on.
Oh yeah.
There's that
Oh
little
yeah.
guitar, that little acoustic guitar strumming that's like in this ear, in your left
Yes.
ear. And
Yes.
it's like when you put on headphones, you're like, oh, there's actually a lot going on in this song. And it's
Everything's
really,
panned hard right, hard
yeah,
left. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Never Going Back is fantastic. It's always a stereo or speaker or cartridge test song, which is
Yes.
really not really very good at that because it sounds good no matter what you play it on. So
God, it sounds amazing. It always sounds great. Yeah. Yeah.
if you really want to sell to yourself that your new speakers sound really good, play that because it's not going to sound bad.
Exactly.
And a lot has been said about Don't Stop and Go Your Own Way. Songbird is really beautiful. It kind of became Christine's kind of signature song in a way. And the, the chain,
The
man, the
chain.
sound of that bass drum in the chain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so good. And it's a song kind of about the band and you can say what you want to say about whether or not they broke the chain. But
Right. 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 Yes,
but
exactly.
fantastic song. I Don't Want to Know is great. Nobody ever talks about that. Oh Daddy is fantastic. I like it better than Sugar Daddy on the first album. They've got
Right.
kind of similar titles, but they're very different songs. Gold Dust Woman is a great Stevie Nicks kind of showcase.
Oh
And
God.
I'd have to go through here, but I'm pretty sure that that's the only time that Stevie gets the last word on an album. I think that's the only track
Oh, that's
no, she
interesting. You
does
might.
on Say You Will.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
But but yeah, and actually, where's Tusk? I could be just completely wrong about that. No, Never Forget's kind of a Christine song.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a really cool place for Gold Dust Woman because it almost seems like it could have been earlier in the album, but
Yeah.
it works
It's
where it's
amazing.
at.
I think it works great as a closer. Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, number two of
Number two.
between the best two kinds of pizza is gonna
Yes.
be Mirage.
Yes. Yes. I'm just going to reiterate this. So this is funny. This is funny because they're like we said, we these are both 5 stars. They're
Right.
both perfect records in my
Yeah.
opinion. Perfect.
Same
So
here.
it's just a question of where you're going to put them. And I I swear we didn't talk about this, people. Here's my list. I wrote it down. You can see number two. Rumors is at number two. And I got it. Now you emboldened me. I was thinking about switching. I was like, people are gonna kill me, but it's like I I'm going number two, Rumors as well. And I wonder, here's the question. Here, and this could be a whole nother episode of like, does fatigue on the songs, does that count? Should that count? If you're,
Right.
you know what I mean? Is listener fatigue, is that part? Because I've heard people talk about this before. Like, I'm so tired of that song. Like, I've heard it so much. It's almost like I have fatigue, and you almost want to skip songs because you've heard them so much. You want to like listen to the songs you haven't heard as much. So there's a little bit of that going on in Rumors but it's an amazing record. There's no question about it. And I don't know what else to say. You basically nailed it all. It's like everybody is on the top of their game. Everyone's playing and writing just so, and their vocals are just melding perfectly, and the drums sound amazing. The rhythm section sounds awesome. I mean, there's just the songs are unbelievable. I mean, secondhand news, never going back again. Don't stop. Go your. I mean, there's not a bad moment. And the chain. I mean, the chain and Gold Dust Woman, I think, are my favorite songs on the record. There's something about the chain that just gets me every time when it breaks down to that dun, 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 and it goes in that and they just do that jam and you're just like, oh, this is the best.
Yeah, you're reminding me that I haven't talked enough about John McVie during this discussion, but John McVie is a beast. I
He
mean, there are
is.
so many songs where he sounds like such a badass. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
even in the later records, he does.
Yeah, he's one of those guys like he doesn't require a lot of the spotlight, but he's like a great player, you know.
That
But yeah,
part in
so
Destiny Rules, and Lindsay talks about that, has talked about this in a couple of different documentaries where and they show him doing it on Destiny Rules. He basically just sits there and he listens to the first verse, and then he just starts playing.
yeah,
He
yeah,
just makes it
yeah,
up on the fly. He doesn't like, oh, I got to take it home. You know what I mean? He just sits on the
yeah.
in the studio and goes, okay, I got it, and then he just does his thing.
And you can tell Mick just has massive respect for John. Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so yeah, so anyway, we can move on. Let's just go to number one, which we both picked, which is pretty cool actually.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. When I think back to this time, I remember I was pretty young. In 1975, I was 11 years old. And so my older sister was 3 years older than me. And she had these on 8 track. She had Fleetwood Mac and Rumours. And so when I think about these two albums, I think there was probably a time when I was 12, 13, 14 years old where I was mixed up as to which was which.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
they both had these
They
same
both have
kind
the
of
weird
photographs
colors, yeah,
on
the weird
them.
covers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and the cover has that textured, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say about this album, the reason why I put it first, and one of those reasons is I think it has a little bit of a sonic edge over Rumors. There are
Okay.
parts of Rumors where the drums sound a little muted, and I think it's on purpose, but I think that the sound of the band is more consistent on the first record. And when you look at these songs, it's really every bit as good as, I mean, if you were just going to look at it as a casual fan, as far as how many hits are on these, it's really a draw.
Yeah. Yes. Right.
I think that
Right.
there are probably people that think that some of these songs that are on the self-titled album are actually on Rumors, and then they find out later that they're not.
Yes, I think you might be have a point there. I think that's true. I never thought about that, but you're probably right.
But it introduces Lindsay Buckingham in such a great way because Monday Morning is something that would be on a Fleetwood Mac album prior to this, but it's also this quirky dude that nobody knows anything about. And it's sort of a precursor to what is to come. But it also doesn't sound out of place. Like if the
Right.
people that bought like Penguin and Heroes Are Hard to Find and Mystery to Me bought this, they'd be like, oh, okay, new guy. He
Yeah.
sounds pretty good. You know, it's
Yeah.
not like it's so out there that it doesn't fit.
They're not stars
So
yet. Yeah, they're not stars at
yeah,
all.
yeah. I've always liked Blue Letter, even though it's a cover. I like the way the band sounds. I like the way that's recorded. Of course, Rhiannon is spectacular. Over My Head, Crystal is beautiful. Crystal, of course, comes from the Buckingham Nicks days,
Yep.
and
Yep.
I think that Crystal sometimes gets overshadowed by Songbird because they're I always think of them as similar because they're last track on side one, but I think Crystal's the better song of those two.
Hmm.
And Say You Love Me, talk about stereo demo song.
Yeah.
The sound
Yeah.
of those drums and the sound of McVie's bass and when Christine's vocals come in, if you're trying to demonstrate that whatever equipment you're listening to can duplicate the warmth of a female vocalist, that's the song you play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Definitely.
so, and landslide obviously is beautiful. World turning is the most amazing thing. World turning is like it is the ultimate concert song. The
Yes.
way that kind of chugs along, and when the drums finally kick in, it's totally. I want to hold my beer up, and I don't even drink beer. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like
Yes.
it's the
Yes.
it's
Yep.
the ultimate arena rock. You know, stand up out of your chair and put your hands in the air song, and it's
Yeah.
just at the same time, it's kind of understated,
Right.
but it's
Right.
also that. So I just think that's great, and of course, I'm so afraid. Stunning.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely stunning. Talk about introducing a guitarist. Wow.
yeah, yeah. So
So that's
I
my number one.
yeah, and obviously we both have this at number one. So you've pretty much said it all. So I'm just gonna say that there's something about this record that's hard to put your finger on. I know there's like a magic that's happening, and I think it happened immediately when these two joined the band. And there's something I mentioned the vocals on Rumors. I mean, it's here as well. There's like this when they harmonize, when the three of them harmonize, and especially on these first two records that they made, they just sound so good.
Yeah.
Stevie, Lindsay, and Christine, it's like, oh my God, they sound so good. And I mean, maybe this is like the height of their vocal powers or something. I don't know, but it's so good. And and the songs are just on. I mean, I love Monday Morning. I love World, like you said, World Turning is like a great deep track. Like people don't know that song. It's a deep track, but it's great.
Yeah.
And I'm So Afraid is another one. Love Crystal. So there's songs that are like aren't hits on this. I just love the whole album. I think the whole album is fantastic. So you pretty much nailed it already. I don't really have to keep repeating everything you're saying. So, but yeah, number one for me is the also the self-titled Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
So
And you mentioned the vocal blend. That's my number one reason that, I mean, when you look at a couple of friends of mine and me, there were three of us, and we were in a chat group, and we decided that we were going to rank our favorite bands and artists in tier one, tier two, and tier three.
mhm,
And so we did, 20 in each tier, and we ranked them. It was impossible to do. And of course, I'm still changing mine all the time. But
right,
one of the reasons when you look at Fleetwood Mac and you look at all the other different kinds of bands that I love, Fleetwood Mac is kind of the outlier. Fleetwood Mac is
right,
kind of the really super mainstream band that everybody likes, and everybody's mom has their album and and their
right. They're not that cool to like. Yeah, exactly.
if you have one album and the Crossley Cruiser, Rumors is the album you have. And so
Yeah.
it's like, but the reason that they're so great is because there are first of all, you got this rhythm section that's Buckingham and McVie, and they've been through it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? They
Yeah.
go way, way back. If you
Yeah.
talk to anybody, even in prog circles, they knew these guys. They,
Mhm.
gigged with these guys they were on the bill with them, and so
Yes.
they've been
Yeah.
around forever. But then for this particular incarnation of Fleetwood Mac, you have these three uh, songwriters and vocalists who don't go together at all.
Hmm.
Lindsay's got a super weird, quirky voice. When I was a kid, I used to think that Lindsay sounded like a girl because his voice was so odd for like
Yeah.
a guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And uh, and then you've got Stevie Nicks, also super weird voice. We're used to it because she's such a big star. And then
Right.
you've got Christine, who's totally the opposite. Totally this mellow, kind of very tuneful, very in tune, she seems like she's just a very accomplished vocalist. Like maybe she went to school and got a degree. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you put the three of them together and it just sounds totally out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people always think of like Don't Stop and stuff like that. But when you get into the deep cuts for Fleetwood Mac, they really became a very strange band.
Yeah. Yeah.
And through it all, you've got all of this crazy stuff happening with these three people who don't seem like they wouldn't go together at all. But then you've got them backed by this rhythm section that's so just meat and potatoes. And then you throw that together and you got this weird, crazy, cool thing.
Yeah.
I think that happens very rarely.
Right. Right. Yeah, the rhythm section, like you said, always has it nailed down. And they never have to worry about that. There's always this
Right.
rock solid rhythm section below them. And there's more when you go through this catalog like we just did, you realize they took more chances than you remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
They took
They
a lot of chances. They
yeah,
even took chances on our number one and number two.
right. Right, exactly. Because Lindsay was never, I mean, especially Lindsay, I would say, was never content. He was never content to just, hey, that's good. We'll just repeat rumors. No, he wasn't that
Right.
all didn't want to do that. So so really quick, we're gonna wrap it up, but really fast, we have to mention the record you held up earlier, which is basically Fleetwood Mac without Stevie.
Yeah,
right?
and I have a this is a Lindsay Buckingham, Christy McVie.
Yep,
If you look inside, there's the band right there.
yep,
Lindsay, Christine, Mick Fleetwood, John McVie, and Mitchell Froom on keyboards.
yep.
Um, I have a theory about this record. I think that there was really going to be a fourth or not fourth of an album that was supposed to come out
Yeah, yep,
2018-ish.
right.
And I think that this was it. And I think they salvaged what they could and turned it into a Lindsey Buckingham slash Christy McVie album.
Yep,
If you look at this album, it's got a very standard Hollywood cover.
yep,
It's got this photo in here. Everything else is gray. It's
right.
all very simple.
Yep,
And
yep.
so I think that this was two-thirds
Yes,
of the album
yes,
was. And then
yeah.
Christine, I'm sorry,
Uh,
uh, Stevie never brought her stuff.
right, right.
And
Yep.
they finally said, well, we're not going to wait any longer.
We're not going to wait. Yeah,
They
yep,
put this out. Yeah,
yep, yep.
that's
And
my
there's some
guess.
strong, but there's some strong material on that. I think there's some
There
strong.
is. There absolutely is. And I think that I'll go even a step further and speculate that I think that this album was going to be called On With the Show because they called the tour that.
Oh, okay,
And
okay,
so I
okay.
like to think that maybe somewhere out there are mock-ups for an album cover, and maybe it's called that, maybe it's called something else. But I think, it's a tremendous machine to have to crank up to make a
Yes,
Fleetwood Mac album.
exactly,
And I
exactly.
think probably some of the initial legwork was probably done,
Right,
and maybe someday we'll find out.
right. It's like the Smile covers that they made for the Smile album for the Beach
Yeah,
Boys that never came out. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I never, it's funny, some of that stuff I never thought about. That's great. But yeah, that was an interesting, and I think that record was really the album that really created the divide. Like I think when that album came out, Stevie was really pissed.
yeah,
I think
because
she
they
was
went ahead
really
and put it
upset.
out without her.
Yeah, I think she was really upset when that happened.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but
And then
anyway,
they toured it with musicians that I think Lindsay probably would have used for a solo tour.
yeah,
So they toured
yeah,
it. They didn't tour it with McVie and Fleetwood. They toured it with another band. And so
yeah.
I think that it's all very interesting. Um,
Interesting stuff.
if anybody watching this show has not delved into the post 2000 Lindsey Buckingham uh, solo records, Under the Skin, Gift of Screws, and Seas We Sow, they are spectacular. So
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you like Fleetwood Mac even a little, Stevie Nicks went out of her way when this album came out to talk to the press about how great she thought it was.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
it's really good stuff if you've not looked into those.
Yeah, delve into Lindsay's solo catalog. There's a lot of gems in there for
He gets
sure.
off to a rough start with his solo catalog, I have
Yeah.
to admit. I love Go
Go
Insane.
insane
It's a
and
weird record, and Law and Order almost seems like it's half complete.
yeah, Law and
So,
Order is not very good. Yeah,
but
I
once you get to
Out of the Cradle.
Out of the Cradle and on, it's
Yeah.
really spectacular stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. The first two are kind of like, "Ooh." Yeah. So, but anyway, we're getting off. We do this,
Yeah,
people. We get off on tangents, and we're getting off on
right.
another tangent. So but we're gonna wrap this up. So thank you very much for Todd. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks for
That's
having
all.
me. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, yeah, this was a fun one. This really was. These are tough. Some of these rankings are this is two
Yeah.
tough rankings in a row for me. This is killing me. But this is great music, and I'm happy to be delving back into it. And Todd, I can tell that you have a lot of passion for it, which is so great. So thanks again for joining me. And if you were, if you're still with us, we appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and you must be a big Fleetwood Mac fan. What's your list? We want to know. Put it below. Let us know. Let us know your list. Because I read all the comments. I reply to comments. Always have to say, hit the like button and subscribe. Subscribing is really important to the channel. So thank you. A lot of people don't subscribe, so please subscribe. And we'll see you next time on Curless Mania. Take care.
Bye, everyone.